Hi, my name is Tom Ollerton, and this is the Shiny New Object podcast. This podcast is about marketing technology, and every week I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing someone from the industry who is either influential, important, interesting, or has caught my eye in some way. And
which one am I?
Remains to be seen.
I'm present.
So I'm really chuffed to have Tom Goodwin here. This podcast wasn't going to happen until 46 seconds ago, but we both decided to show up. So I'm really looking forward to this. Tom is the EVP, Head of Innovation at Zenith, and also author of Digital Darwinism. And Tom is basically the most famous person I know on LinkedIn. So we've never actually met face to face. I'm really nice pleased you're here, man. It's great. So for people who aren't on LinkedIn, who don't necessarily know who you are and the kind of stuff you talk about, could you give a little background on how you got to this point and the kind of things you work on?
Okay, that sounds good. It's quite weird to be known for LinkedIn. Like, I feel like if I was like an Instagram celebrity, I'd be really rich and like hang around with models. But instead I get to go to cupboards and talk about the industry. So I'm Tom. I work for Zenith. It's kind of it's my job to start interesting conversations with clients and then sort of provoke an interesting debate. Genuinely, I think we're in quite a confusing time where there is this assumption somehow that everything is different. There's this assumption that every new technology that comes around is quite profound and exciting and there to be used. And it's created a lot of clients, I think, who are quite worried. They sort of tend to fear change. They tend to have quite existential questions when it comes to how they should change and where they should spend their money and where they should spend their attention. And it's my job to not have the answers, because I'm only 39, so I'm not like some oracle. But it's my job to bring about stimulus that will start interesting conversations so we can explore the change that matters and the change that doesn't. That means that quite often I sound quite cynical because there's quite a few technologies I don't think are particularly exciting. It means that sometimes I sound quite simplistic because I don't think that things are quite as complicated as we presume they are. And it means I'm quite irritating because because I am. Because being irritating is quite a good way to bring about more interesting conversations. Like, for some reason, we have this assumption that, being contrarian is annoying and disruptive and destructive, or that by challenging the status quo is something that you do if you're like a moron and you want attention. And I just think there's absolute lot of crap being said in the world right now. So I'm quite privileged to have a situation where I get to challenge that on the basis that what I learn from that conversation helps inform the conversations I have with clients. It was quite vague, wasn't it?
I was pretty vague, but I really like that being irritating brings about interesting conversations. So let's leave that at a high level, and we'll jump into the getting to know you questions. Some people do a lot of work for these questions and print it all out. You said I vaguely glanced at them, so I'm very interested in this.
Is that not normal?
No, that's good.
I took this seriously. It was a strategic decision to be extemporaneous about these things.
So, easy one. Other than your own book, what is the marketing book you recommend most often?
It's not really a marketing book, but Tom Peters was amazing for me. So I sort of grew up in the middle of the English countryside. I remember, I think it was like the late 90s, reading this book called Reimagine. And this book, if you look at it now, because my parents kept everything from me being a child as they do, it kind of like predicts the future. It sort of talks about an era where Netflix will destroy blockbusters, where Monzo might worry banks, where Tesla might give concerns to car companies. It was all about the sort of spirit of disruption and change before it became trendy. So it's an amazing thing to read to understand the context of all this change.
And for people who don't know Tom Peters, including myself, what is the context of that book? Is he a technologist?
In theory, he's a management consultant, but he's a kind of rogue management consultant. He's kind of like an angry man. He sort of comes from the school that gave us sort of Peter Drucker. I mean, not literally the school. But he kind of comes from this place where he's been guiding companies on proper managerial and business change. So he doesn't really come from the world of marketing. He certainly doesn't come from the world of technology. But
so how did what countryside were you in?
English countryside.
How did you come across them, like a rogue
No idea.
management consultant
I have no idea.
in the 90s?
I think he's
Why weren't you at a rave
Yeah.
or a Blur concert or
My
something?
village wasn't that exciting. I don't know how I came about it, actually. We'd have to like do some studying on advertising campaigns and attribute it to a single ad that I clicked on.
So on from books, what was the most useful thing you've bought with your own money that you've used for work? And you don't say Tom Peters very much.
With my own money.
So I don't mean like, oh, well, they paid for me to go to Vegas and do like a retreat with some...
I think, I mean, actually the things that are most useful for me are free. So I'm going to do that thing where you sort of take the question where you want to take it, which is, it's amazing to me that things like Twitter are free. Because
No, I can't. You can't. I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let
So it has
you
to be an
just...
item I bought.
You have the purpose of the question is to work out where they put your money where your mouth is. What have you
Can I
bought?
save my mobile phone?
You don't work pay for it.
Yeah, now they do, but like the first time I bought a mobile phone.
Right, okay, that
The
was...
first sort of proper smartphone I bought was this like Motorola that was on 3G from the 3 network, and it was an absolutely massive brick of a phone. And I bought it because I knew it was going to be important for me to understand what phones are going to become. So it was
Where were
probably
you
like
working?
£500. This was years ago. I think I was working at Comet as like a weekend job or something.
Really?
I think, I mean, I'm probably going to be wrong here, but I think it was like 2003 or 2002 or something. It was the Motorola like 17193 SD or something like that. You know how these companies come up with clueless names because they've got no idea how to market themselves. But it was the first phone. It was the first 3G phone that you could get in the UK, and it was really expensive, absolutely massive, had terrible battery life. And I remember just looking at it, going, "This is going to be important for me to understand."
And you had a weekend job in Comet.
Yeah, it was amazing. I used to sort of sell electrical equipment to gullible strangers. I mean, joking aside, it's actually...
Things aren't that different. Than something.
Yeah, I was gonna say. And now I work in advertising, so it's totally different. It was weird. You learn a lot about how weird people were, actually. Like, every time I see a sort of target audience described in like a presentation, you like to think that things are simple and that, there are all these people that make jewellery and read Vogue magazine and they sort of live in Williamsburg and like artisanal liquor. And actually, most people are very strange. Like, there'd all sorts of people who like wouldn't buy a Sony phone because they thought Japanese people liked dogs to eat.
Right.
There'd be people who would sort of buy a fridge, and the only way they'd buy it is if it would be less than like £2 per week, because that's how they thought about the flow of money. There'd be people that would only buy things with extended warranties because they were just sort of paranoid that everything was going to break. So by doing a face-to-face sales job, I just learned like an incredible amount about how people actually behave and how they really make decisions as well.
So, I'm not assuming that Comet's going to be part of this, but what has been your biggest work failure that has set you up for success?
Yeah, again, I want to make this my own by talking about the fact that I've failed like virtually all the time.
What's the worst one? What's the one where you still go, ugh?
Well, there's two. There's one where I helped launch a phone, and they spent $500 million, and they sold 147 phones.
Whoa. What?
And I don't really take responsibility for that because I sat in all these meetings saying, I don't think this is going to work, guys. Like, I think this is a bit expensive. Like, teenagers aren't going to buy something on a contract because they're not able to buy contracts yet. This was in America, and it was with a very big American software company that will go nameless, working together with a Japanese company that was our client. But I can't really take responsibility for that because I tried all my best. The other one was...
before you move on from that, so what was it? It wasn't your fault, and you put your foot down and you said, look, I don't think this is a good idea. So
Yeah.
why have you taken that on as your failing?
Well, I mean, I was kind of somewhat complicit in it. It is possible to rerun the tapes that exist in my head of memories and think that somehow, knowing what I know now, I could have like been more vocal. I could have worked behind the scenes and worked all the channels behind that picture, and come up with arguments that were more rooted in data rather than just my own sort of empathetic feelings. At the same time, it was very apparent at the time that this particular American company, who's now got a very different leader, was a very sort of arrogant company. They demonstrate this behaviour, which is quite common even now, where people don't know what they don't know, And somehow that means that when you tell them stuff that doesn't fit into their existing knowledge tree, they don't look at this and go, oh, wow, this is a whole form of knowledge we should be aware of and we should make changes. They tend to do kind of like, computer says no, because it doesn't somehow like fit into the existing structure in which they see the world.
It's so interesting that you say that, because that was one of the things that Tracy Follows from Future Made was talking about last week, about the most dangerous thing isn't the thing that you don't know, it's misunderstanding the thing that you do know.
Absolutely. And the weird thing about this is this was a very large American software company, and they came to this with a long history of having like 70 to 90% of market share. And they had within their culture this assumption that they would always be correct, and that their way of seeing things in a logical manner was just how the world was, and that retail was just a question of sort of spending money and persuading people. And they were just completely incapable of understanding the huge challenges they were going to face.
So what was then that you were about to tell a story about?
Yeah, I don't know if I should mention the name, but so Nokia launched a music service in the UK.
What was that called?
Nokia Music. We charged them a fortune for the branding. That's a joke. We didn't do that. Future Brand did that. So they had a music service that could, this is probably under NDA still, but they had a music service that could only work on a couple of their handsets, and it only work on a couple of their handsets if you had specific operating systems installed. And actually the weird combination of a specific handset and a specific operating system meant that the total number of people that could ever download this thing and use this thing was probably about 1% of the UK audience. And they were determined to launch this music service across the country. So I think we spent about, maybe about £5 million launching a music service in about 2004, 2005, which I think about 5 or 6 people downloaded.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's always paid £1 million.
Yeah, it's always sort of blown my mind that it'd have been sort of cheaper to get Kylie Minogue to knock on these people's doors, sort of drink champagne with them, play a private gig in their living room.
Is that how you spent £1 million?
I just mean
Kylie. That's,
I don't know why you do
that. Is that your sense of luxury?
Just choose, I don't know, Gigi Hadid or something. Gigi Hadid. I don't. You can pick your sort of supermodel of choice.
You have a lot of money.
You can sort of fly them around on a private jet, and then you can sort of like buy the person's house for them, then download Nokia Music, and you still could have got more people to do it. And I'd sort of take responsibility for that, because I sat in all these meetings and I was like, no, this isn't a great way to spend money. But again, there is a part of me that kind of wishes I'd been a bit more vocal about it.
So we're going to come back to that, not Kylie. So moving kind of right angle.
Yeah.
If you had a digital media budget of 10 million quid.
Yeah.
To get any message out there, what would it be? And you can't use Kylie.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be so stupid as to call it a digital media budget. I'd call it a media budget, because I don't think the idea of digital is a particularly helpful construct. I'd probably because I don't think it means anything anymore. Like, it'd be like saying an electrical media budget. Like, I don't know what there is within the world of digital which is particularly different over other forms of media. And if you think about the things that are different, like its interactivity, or its measurability, then actually you'd be better off calling it interactive media rather than digital media.
Okay. Do you want me to reframe the question?
No, I've already seemed obnoxious. I think I'd have just billboards saying "Trust your gut."
Okay. Like,
we're in this sort of strange epoch in marketing where somehow every time we make a decision, we have to do so with inordinate amounts of data behind us. And I actually think our gut is a way, way stronger feeling than most people realise. I think we've entered a culture where somehow making decisions on a gut makes people feel vulnerable, and I think that's really sad. So whether it's like what girl to sort of snog, or whether it's what job to take, or whether it's what campaign to launch, what tagline to think, what messaging structure to use, I think somehow we kind of know the answers.
Can you give me an example recently where you've trusted your gut, potentially in the face of data?
No, because it doesn't work anymore. That's my problem, is that you have all these conversations with people, and I just want to say, look, clearly you should do A. And I'll sit in meetings and say, clearly you should do A. And then lots of people are like, well, we're not sure. sees what's been done before. And like somehow I am in this environment where I'm not able to bring about change without getting lots and lots of data to do so. And I find that quite frustrating. I think we're almost... I think I did one of these tweets when I was quite angry the other day, but I feel like if a client was going to stick their head in a liquidizer, like the way to stop them these days is not to say, why the fuck are you sticking your head in a liquidizer? It's to sort of commission some sort of like proprietary research to show that people who do stick their head in blenders are more likely to die, and then it's probably to do some sort of A/B testing on not sticking your head in a blender versus sticking your head in a blender. And then if you can get a meeting with their assistant to then get a meeting with their direct report to then get a meeting in 3 months' time with them, you can then persuade them not to stick their head in a blender.
In fairness, there probably isn't that much data to say that that's not a good idea.
And that's why they will stick their head in the blender, I think, because they've been persuaded not to.
So in the last 5 years, which new belief or behaviour has improved your work life?
I don't think my work life has improved because of technology. Again,
no, it's not a technology. Tom, man, it's not a technology question. In the last 5 years, which new belief or behaviour has improved your work life?
I was saying no to meetings.
Ooh, yeah. Go talk. How do you do
that? Just not caring as much as I used to about career progression.
Right. Okay.
I did quite a good. I think it was like a tweet or something saying we spend the first 10 years of our career trying to get into meetings, and then the second 10 years trying to get out of them. But I work in America where there's a kind of culture of busyness and importance, and people would rather sort of justify their existence by the most kind of tangible expressions of busyness and importance than by what they actually accomplish. And that means that people are kind of terrified to not check their emails at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're scared not to check their emails over the weekend. They kind of routinely send out forms of communication that don't need to be sent out at silly times, just to sort of maintain this facade of kind of productivity. And I don't really subscribe to that, really. So I've sort of started to rebel against that and just focus on getting a good job done. And that might mean that I don't go to lots and lots of meetings.
So how do you decide which meetings to say no to? Do you do it by gut feel?
I was going to say, I don't want to sort of like double down on it, but you just get a feeling. Like, what am I actually trying to accomplish at the moment? Like, the secret to these, quote-unquote fast-moving, chaotic times is actually just to be brutally focused on the few things that you're trying to accomplish. So, right now I don't need to meet New York's largest blimp advertising agency. I don't really need to know that much about the new voice skill that may launch themselves on Alexa. Like, I just become quite sort of single-minded in what I care about.
So I agree with that, and I think from a kind of self-help, how to be more efficient, the 7 habits of the world's most effective people. I'm sure, like, saying no to meetings is one of them.
It's my next book.
But how don't you think that you are missing out on opportunities for serendipity and to learn more about other people's opinions and their view and take on a project?
Yes, but we live in a world of abundance where every moment of the day there are things that we could be doing instead of what we're doing. And you need to understand that if you are in a meeting, then you're not going to be on the phone talking to someone else, or you're not going to be walking around the streets of Soho looking at retail outlets, or you're not going to be on the internet looking at Twitter, or you're not going to be writing a piece that you might learn from. So it's not like we face a choice between being in a meeting and being in a kind of flotation tank sort of with our thoughts. There is more than enough sort of stimulus in the world. I mean, I'm sounding like I'm ranting here, but most meetings are not particularly effectively run. Like I would sort of argue I can probably get more from a 3-minute video that a tech company has produced to explain themselves than I will from a 45-minute meeting with them.
Right. And have you used any of the fancy meeting organisational tools like Amy?
No, because for me they didn't work.
So you have tried them?
Yeah, I mean I try everything when it's new. So they may have got better. I mean, the other thing, and this is going to make me sound even more obnoxious than I have so far, like getting time with someone is quite an important sort of human thing. So I remember once sort of this person trying to get time with me, and I get quite a lot of requests for my time, and again that makes me sound like a knob, but they'd use sort of Amy to set up the time, and for me that was a good way of sort of saying your time is not particularly important compared with my time. And I was just sort of thinking, actually that doesn't feel very good. Like the idea that someone's sort of outsourcing, securing time with someone, and they kind of can't be bothered to do it themselves, that just sort of seemed a bit annoying to me.
Did you hear the interesting story about Amy? That it was apparently wasn't automated at all, and it was
Most of these things are not. Like Facebook Messenger was the same as well.
It was really. I didn't know that about Messenger.
Messenger's kind of augmented with human intelligence.
Facebook. They did like a kind of
Yeah, but by augmented, they basically mean that 99% of the stuff was done by some poor person in India or something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with Amy that I found that like it's definitely was part of the sales cycle. Like that rapport or your turn of phrase or your timing is really important. But I felt that that is definitely going to be the way it works in the future. That it won't be like let's meet next Tuesday and then it all.
I guess so. I mean, like in an ideal world, you'd actually just get complete transparency into each other's calendars, and we'd all sort of establish like 2 hours per day that were actually open to meetings. I mean, I sound quite sort of like ruthless and like autistic, but I mean, one also has to be careful about what meetings really are for. And I do think there's quite a lot of kind of the hope of sort of serendipity and the hope of creating like quite an relaxed environment where you get to know each other. But a lot of the time, you're really just trying to get stuff done, and actually, like a lot of meetings just get in the way of that.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking at the start that you're a reader and you're a writer.
Yeah.
And I can't focus on either of those two things. I like talking to people, and in fairness, I run a small business where I don't have internal meetings very much. That when I worked at an agency, I really felt that like meetings was the time that I got stuff done. I was pretty like your nightmarish colleague.
Just chatting about the weekend.
These fucking guys. But also thought on a slightly different level that meetings are the easiest money in town. Because you show up for an hour and you get paid.
Who gets paid?
You get paid.
What do you mean you get
paid?
paid?
You work in an agency. You
I get paid to get stuff done. See, this is like a fundamental...
Do you get paid for time in agencies, don't you? You get paid by, client buys an hour of your time, and if that's hours in a meeting, you're getting paid for that.
As far as I'm concerned, I get paid to accomplish things, and we have to be ruthless. This makes me sound like a real asshole, but we have to be really ruthless.
You can't say that at the start of every sentence.
We have to be really ruthless with the sort of the intensity stroke density of how much a process is helping us get something done. So it's great to go to South by Southwest and get like smashed in a bar and to like be networking and stuff. But actually, most of the time, it's not a particularly great place to do networking. Like it's great to be in a conference and listen to someone talk for an hour about something, but I could probably get 90% of what they've just said by reading an article they've written. So I've become quite sort of intense and quite sort of judgmental and quite strong at sort of filtering out stuff that's a distraction to me.
I heard a lovely quote recently that said something like businesses will get really uppity about how much money's getting spent on stationery or what kind of coffee's getting bought, but they will send tons of ineffectual staff to conferences that don't matter on the other side of the world.
I think conference cultures are very strange, especially in America where it's not a particularly good way to accomplish anything really. Again, like I'm fine with networking, but like let's network by being in like some fascinating bar in Manhattan or something with an amazing view, and let's have like a proper like conversation and really get to know each other. But it's that sort of half-hearted kind of interim of over a coffee and people talking about like which flight they took to get there and what
we're so different because I'm the absolute opposite with conferences. That, like for me, because of the kind of brain I've got, like yes, I could read an article about what that person said 3 weeks later, but because I can't read, I won't read it. Whereas the fact I've sat in a seat and turned my phone off probably means I'm just going to listen to that person, and those are the talks at South by Southwest that have literally changed the way that I work and consequently the kind of path of my life. Whereas if you send me, Tom, you should read this article about AI, like, oh God, no. So I like conversations because it forces me to stop doing anything apart from listen.
Well, I think we can both learn from each other, and I need to learn quite a lot from your discipline, because the idea of turning off the phone when I'm at a conference would scare the hell out of me. It's good that we found our own way of working as well, because the reality is we are all very, very different. I also think I've become quite introverted as well, actually, where like somehow just being around lots of people talking and like just saying stuff just sort of like makes me feel quite sort of low energy somehow.
So you say you become introverted?
I think so, yeah. I mean, also, weirdly, I am in a role where I'm kind of like a buyer of stuff, in that everyone in the world is trying to get into my calendar, not because they think I'm nice or I might be interesting, but because they're trying to sell me stuff. And I think that creates, whether they're trying to get a job, whether they're trying to get career advice, whether they're trying to like get you to write an article, whether they're trying to get you to invest in a company, it sort of creates quite a sort of defensive body language where you end up just sort of trying to sort of push people away almost.
So when you say you're a buyer of stuff, so as an innovation
I just mean in my
person,
role, yeah.
So you have like a fixed budget to buy trials and stuff, or haven't you got to go and beg for that budget from the Pampers account or something?
I mean, like, we're put in a position of power to invest our clients' money on what we think is best. And therefore, if you were to work for New York's largest blimp marketing agency, like, you need to get time in with someone a bit like me in order to make sure that we can sell their solutions to our clients. If you're, everyone from like Snap to, Instagram to some programmatic ad tech company to a designer of wobblers in retail, like, everyone's trying to make sure that people like me are aware of what they offer. Again, this isn't like a personal thing to me. This is just life in like a media agency.
And so what is the kind of outcome of that? So all these people want to sell you this stuff, and yet I kind of sense you kind of feel a bit bad about saying no to people, or
I feel terrible about saying no to people. I wake up probably to about 100 emails from people trying to get time in with me.
Right.
And that's every.
And what works? What gets through? What gets a meeting?
I've just recorded a whole video training program on this actually. But in short, people understanding what you need and then expressing it very, very clearly and quickly. I read your article the other day, Tom, about how retailers should focus on bridging the online and offline world, and how you should be able to buy anything with the click of your thumbprint. I've just set up a company that offers the ability to buy anything with a thumbprint. Boom.
Right, okay, so very literal. There's no romance in it for you. It's just like...
I genuinely, if you get 100 emails a day going, how was your July the 4th? Like, that's not romance, that's like harassment. I don't know, like, again, I'm aware that I sound quite miserable. But,
you can't stop it. No more self-deprecation before
because you do sound miserable, but
things.
it's like you don't really want people to sort of try and pretend to like you when this is happening all day long. Like, you smell quite quickly people that are genuinely interested in you and what you've got to say. And this kind of translation of old forms of media, like phone calls and conversations and face-to-face meeting, to sort of take that and pull it through to this new media is ridiculous. It's like those chatbots, You're stuck at the airport and you think the flight's about to sort of leave, and you go on some chatbot and it says, "Hello, Tom, how are you?" And it's just like, I'm just about to fucking miss my flight. That's how I am. Do you want me to tell you that right now? Like, it would just... I think people should just be appropriate to the medium. And again, like, maybe I'm unusual, but my sense is that actually most people just want a quick sell.
Yeah.
And then I will reply to people with the amount of time and energy that they put into writing to me. So if they've written something which is obviously sent to 50,000 people at the same time, I won't bother replying. If they put some sort of fairly nice comment that shows they spent 30 seconds on thinking about it, then I'll reply with 30 seconds of thought.
So, slight left turn here.
Yeah.
So, you talked about mistakes you made in the past, and things you wish you might have done a bit differently. So, what advice would you give to someone like a smart, driven, young he or she who's just graduated who wants to get into digital marketing?
I think the single biggest advice I'd say is sort of be curious and sort of fuel your curiosity. I think while the marketplace for jobs is mainly advertising people that are somewhat specialists, I think we all need to be quite generalist in our knowledge base. I think most creatives in advertising agency probably end up with about 29 different browser tabs open and they start on Wikipedia looking into the flag of Nepal, and they sort of end up on a page about, Duran Duran's first album. And like they just take these weird and wonderful journeys through the internet because they're just fascinated by everything.
I can't bear people having lots of tabs open.
We're gonna have a big fight by the end of this.
Right click, close all of the tabs. Unquote.
I'm actually quite similar.
Because this idea that like there's so many tabs you can't see the colour of the favicon anymore.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, what am I going to do before I go to bed tonight? Is open up each one of these. No, you're just there trying to make everyone think that you've looked at the flag of Nepal. So this podcast isn't about me.
Do you use Safari reading list? Because that's my sort of tool for the insanity.
Do I use a reading list? I think we've probably covered that. It's the fucking last thing that I'll use in fairness. Right, okay,
Yeah.
So when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, how do you get back on track?
Go for a walk.
Where'd you go?
Anywhere really. I just sort of need like a bit of stimulus that's sort of visual. Probably the opposite to you again.
Right, yeah.
I don't know, just like walk past like weird shops or like walk down Hudson River or just anything that's sort of like somehow like hypnosis for my eyes.
Right,
I also really, really enjoy being on a plane. Like I do fly quite a lot, and that's mainly because I just really, really love being on a plane. Like there's
Why
something.
do you enjoy being on a plane?
Because you sort of rise above everything, and you can kind of look down on the world, and you realise that most of the stuff that we sort of think about and worry about and are consumed by isn't particularly exciting or important. So it just gives you great perspective.
And when you're on the flight, are you reading or writing killer tweets, or are you,
Killer tweets.
do you watch?
I never watch
Despicable
films.
Me
Actually, I've got like no attention span at all. So I never watch a film. I'd never listen to music, which is both sort of quite sad. I might watch a bit of live TV. Somehow I watch CNBC quite a lot on flights for some reason. I also enjoy gin and tonics a lot on flights.
Okay, how many did you get through on a flight?
Not answering that. I have to edit that out.
I was on one of those Virgin flights where they had a bar.
It's their job to just get you as drunk as possible.
Yeah, well, not where I sit, but I appreciate things might be.
No, in like economy, it's the same as well because they know that you'll be quieter if you're drunk.
Right.
Especially Virgin. I honestly feel like Virgin, they just look at you and they go, right, this will take 9. They just see how quickly they can get there.
In lots of ways, you live in a parallel universe to me. I'm starting to understand this.
That's in economy as well.
So we're at the halfway stage.
Yeah.
It's your shiny new object.
Yeah.
I think this sounds a bit grandiose now that
Yeah.
I made this your shiny new object downstairs.
Well, we agreed on this. So.
The future of mobile.
Well, no, I think the mobile phone. We spent about 10 years saying, next year's going to be the year of mobile, or this year's the year of mobile. And every year it continues to bring like ridiculous amounts of change to our world in a way that we've never really predicted, and we still haven't really got to grips with. So the mobile phone is kind of everything you could ever want in marketing. And generally speaking, most mobile experiences are not particularly good. And generally speaking, there is this assumption somehow that blockchain is fascinating, or that AI is the future, or that VR will be the next big thing, or that AR is crazy. And we haven't really figured out how to use mobile properly yet. So it's kind of here as part of some campaign of mine to try and get people to actually create good experiences for mobile. If you ever try and pick up a rental car, like it's a terrible experience through mobile. If you ever try and do sort of most banking things, it's a pretty crappy way to do them. So I just, buying things is normally quite painful. I'd love to see us kind of rethink the world around these devices. So why can't you pay for public transport based on the moment you got on the bus and the moment you got off the bus, and they would just retrospectively charge you based on what time of day it was and how far you went? Why can't you use them for passports when you go between countries? Why can't you scan your gym equipment as you work out and you get like a summation of how you've worked out that day? I just somehow think that we can work around them being more important.
So I love that utopia. I feel like I'm back in a digital agency 8 years ago. I guess mobile's going to be massive. But so what's for people who aren't as convinced about mobile as you are, why is mobile UX so bad? Why is paying for something? Why is looking at your bank account? What's stopping mobile becoming this utopian tool?
I think there's
for
a couple of
marketers?
things. I mean, there are some examples where it's not fair that they should assume you've got a mobile phone. So I think if you tried to set up a library card system where books that you borrowed would be monitored on your phone, there'd be this strong sense of actually not everyone's got a phone. A lot of it's about privacy. Like there's this assumption that any information that we take from people are going to freak out about. So there would be this assumption that if your bus company knew where you got on and off, that you would like be up in arms about it. But most of it,
I heard about a insurance company.
Yeah.
Shall remain nameless because I can't remember who it was.
So it's as good a reason as any.
They were tracking people on their mobile app for when they were stood outside the pub for like 15 minutes when they're having a cigarette, and they couldn't use that data to inform, but they were tracking it. They could work out that this person's a smoker.
I tend to have quite a relaxed attitude about privacy, where I feel like most of us are probably not behaving particularly extraordinarily, and that as long as it's sort of somewhat anonymised and it's used where possible to sort of help us, I'm kind of all right with it. I mean, the main thing is that companies just haven't really rethought what it can mean. Like they tend, if you're a car insurance company, like mobile doesn't just mean that you can access the purchase funnel using the mobile website. Mobile means that actually you could track how people are accelerating and how they're decelerating. You could give them tips on better driving. You could track where they are in the country and automatically charge them extra if they drive into another country. You could track when people are driving and when people are not driving and charge for their car insurance based on how often they actually drive. I just think there's a big difference between, it's a kind of grand theory of mine, which is kind of in the book, but not properly, where the first stage of a technology is we have it and we just sort of spread it everywhere, and it's the kind of installation phase. And then the next phase tends to be us figuring out how we can do the things that we always used to do on that device.
Yeah.
And then the third one is when you get new companies that think about it and think, wait a minute, what does this mean for this industry? Like, how can we create new behaviors? How can we create new business models? And I don't think we've got there yet with phones. So you can kind of take any business model and think, what's the digital version where we take what we've done before and apply it? And then it's a much harder exercise to think, what does this really mean? But it means that, I know scooters are quite a good example. Dockless bicycles. Like, dockless bicycles are a thing that's only possible because of the mobile phone. And actually, they are quite transformative, I think. So it's stuff like that I get really passionate about.
But to your point, no one would have started off going, well, let's have a dockless bicycle
No, exactly.
service. You need to make the Carling iPint app first. And
Whatever you do in life, you have to make the Carling iPint first.
So I had this really weird experience on mobile the other day.
Yeah.
So I obviously left an agency where they buy my phone every year and had to buy my own phone for the first time in a decade, which was kind of weird. And I stopped playing games on Apple because like games just I think there's a lot of respect for people that make great games, but I can't spend any more of my life playing them, so I just don't look at them. So I thought, but I'm going to go on the Play Store and see what's a game, what's a game on an Android.
Yeah, because you're Android. When your phone number was green on my phone when I texted you earlier, I was like, oh shit, he's giving me the wrong number. Like, it didn't occur to me that someone as successful as you would be on Apple.
But I went into the Play Store and I can't remember how many, but it was more than 2 and probably around about 4 games. The top 10 games were all Candy Crush rip-offs.
Really?
So it was incredible that like after 10 years of app development that we just sort of coalesced around this like really one finger swiping.
Yeah. There's a slight sort of tangent here, which is we keep on thinking that like brands are dead and that Alexa means that we're going to go around asking for batteries, not for Duracell. I actually think brands are more useful than ever. So it wouldn't surprise me if the success of Candy Crush type games isn't almost like a spin-off of like our recognition of that form of gameplay. A bit like how franchise films perform really well because everyone's like, oh, it's the Invincibles, let's just do it.
So go on, go a bit deeper into that. and I'm really interested to hear what you think about voice. So you don't think you clearly don't think voice is going to kill mobile, and we're not going to go on that.
Well, to sort of take issue with the way you express it, like we have this weird thing where everything either has to be like the future and kill everything, or it's dead somehow. Like you don't really get a particularly strong readership rate if you say, global warming is complicated. You get readers if you say that global warming doesn't exist, or if it's going to be far worse than anyone ever expected. And we have a similar sort of thing in our industry where, TV is either dead or it's everything. Facebook is either completely slaughtered or Instagram's going to change everything. Like voice is quite interesting. Like it's not really there yet.
Do you have a voice to voice at home?
I've got about 7.
Really?
It's kind of my job to get this. I don't know. I've got like 2 Echo Minis, one the big Echo, one Echo Look, and a Google Home.
You've got Echo Look.
Yeah.
The one that takes photographs of you.
I like that. It gives me a thrill.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry, I mean the Echo Show. I need to get the Echo Look now. And I play around. I mean, it's my job to understand this.
Right,
The very first day that I found out the Echo existed, like I would speak to the people from Amazon's PR department and just say, I write for TechCrunch. Is there any way for me to get a device before anyone else? They obviously say, who are you? Certainly not. And then I kind of put it on order. So I've had it. It's my job to understand this and play around with it and get things to talk to each other. I use it every single day, but only to set my alarm clock.
Really?
It's really good at that. Okay. But my kind of slightly more intelligent point, hopefully, is that like every UI tends to sort of add to the old one. Like it's a bit like media. Like newspapers didn't really kill the radio; they kind of just became another form of radio. TV didn't really kill newspapers and the radio; they just sort of added to it. In the 50s, we had like punch cards, which were replaced by the keyboard, and then we had the mouse, which augmented the keyboard, and then we had touch interface, I guess, with the first iPhone. And you don't look at touch and think, wow, this changes everything in marketing. Like let's launch like a touch screen advertising agency. You don't look at the mouse and think, my God, this is a revelation in e-commerce. Like all together, they sort of create slightly new behaviors and they sort of make the internet feel a bit more tactile. But they don't sort of fundamentally change what's possible. And I think voice for me is going to be another additional way that we are able to cram more stuff into our lives. But I think it's sort of incremental rather than a paradigm shift. It becomes slightly interesting when you think about moments when you don't have screens. So the idea of being able to talk to your car system and say, can you plot the route to Reading and I'd like to get a Starbucks on the way. That's slightly interesting. But we tend to sort of think that somehow these use cases are going to be more popular than they really are. Another thing that could be quite interesting is when your TV is on and your Echo is on, and you see an ad for, Ford Explorer. In theory, you could say to your Echo, book me a test drive for the Explorer tomorrow. Or it can be an ad for Personal Automatic, and you can say, order this, add this to my shopping list. But I think we're lying if somehow we think that's going to like fundamentally rewire the world of marketing.
Trying to stitch two things together that you said there. That with mobile, there's still horrendous banking experiences or car hire experiences. It's very rare that you're like, oh my God, that worked. Yeah. Apart from maybe ordering something on Amazon with one click, it's pretty rare. You're like, oh, well, right, that's done. But with mobile, it almost doesn't matter how bad things are because people just have to use it. Yeah. Like you will be in like Faro or whatever thing. Right, I've got to hire a car. Fuck, I've got to download the Avis app. And you just have to kind of like just, ram that thing home. Yeah. Whereas with voice, my experience of it, having been, I like to think pretty early with it from an innovation perspective.
Do you use it much or not though?
No, because it doesn't work. Like literally, outside of all the brilliant things it can do, it doesn't understand what I say. And you only got to have, you only have to have one group of friends around having a drink and sorry guys, stop. Alexa, play Sympathy for the Devil. And if it doesn't work, then you're an idiot.
Yeah. It's not a particularly great way to do most things either. Like I think part of I feel like I'm in room 101 and have to sort of stand up for the mobile phone here or something. But part of the reason why the mobile is great it is pretty much the best way to do everything. Like, when you are trying to change your seat on a flight, it's actually way easier to do that on the Delta app than it is to do on the Delta website. If you are trying to find out the local butcher, like, it's actually way easier on your phone than anything else. If you're trying to do most things now, the phone is the best way. And similarly, voice is normally the worst way to do anything. I mean, can you imagine using like the Echo to find out about a nearby hotel room? Can you imagine using the Echo to, pay someone some money? It would just be a terrible experience. We sort of forget the importance of sort of visual feedback as well. Like to say to, I mean, that's partly why the Echo Show is quite interesting, because in theory I could say to it, Alexa, order me a 24-pack of Jaffa cakes, and I get to see a sort of picture of Jaffa cakes, which, makes me really want to have Jaffa cakes right now, actually. But it kind of gives me like reaffirmment that that's the thing I'm ordering, and that it knows what I'm doing, and that they exist in stock, and that it will show me when it's going to be delivered and stuff.
So going back to your point before about, I can't remember what you called them, but the 3 stages of adoption of a technology. You've got the kind of like, well, let's do everything with it.
Yeah, the first one, which is the technology happening and sort of being in people's hands, and then you have people taking existing models and sort of pulling and sort of applying to that technology, and then you have the other one which is sort of rebuilding around it.
And you gave the example of the kind of OVO bike type thing being a really good use of mobile. So where do you think the kind of next hill to conquer is with mobile? Like where in 5 years' time when we repeat this podcast, like where are we going to be with mobile?
It's probably wrong and it's probably unpopular, but I don't think we're going to be in a radically different place hardware-wise. I think what will tend to happen is our devices will work more with each other. So I would kind of a crappy little use case would be that if you ask your Echo what time it is, then it would also sort of appear on your phone in sort of big letters. Or if you ask about the directions from A to B on your Echo, they'd sort of seamlessly transfer over to your phone or your watch or something. So I think it's more about things working in unison. I think another thing will be automation. I'm surprised this hasn't happened already, but I would kind of expect that if I go into dig in, like I do to it's a kind of QSR restaurant in New York, if I go in to dig in, I'd kind of expect it to open up the payment app which allows me to pay for dig in. Like I kind of would expect it to know that every time I go to dig in, I pay using a QR code payment provider. And therefore it should sort of automatically open that up. I'd expect if I go to Heathrow Airport that my American Airlines app will open up automatically. I'd expect that like these things will start making sort of predictions about what we're likely to want and sort of offer it to us automatically. The other thing is like this stuff will almost like disappear somewhat in that I kind of expect some of the smartness to come out of our devices and into systems. By that I mean I don't think the future of passport control in countries is that you have a QR code that you scan on your phone. I think it's that it does facial recognition and you don't need a passport because all of the intelligence is actually in the sort of back end. Or similarly, things like tax credits for people might happen without people having a mobile phone. It's just this stuff happens automatically through your kind of face or something. So I'm expecting almost smartness to come out of the devices. But I think as an actual physical construct, like we may need to accept that the perfect form factor for something like a mobile phone is actually a mobile phone.
What does that mean?
It means like everyone keeps on thinking that AR is going to kill the phone, or that VR is going to kill the phone, or the smartwatch is going to kill the phone, or that the tablet's going to kill the phone, or that we're going to have phones that are like embedded in our bodies. We may just find that actually we quite like a phone, and it's actually quite useful because it's a nice screen to carry around, and that we can put it down if we want. And that the good thing about a phone is people around us know when we're looking at it, so that you know when to ignore us and when to talk to us. I just have an open mind to the fact it may be the best thing we've ever made.
So, if you were a marketing director, for I don't know, it's like Blue Microphones,
it's my dream job.
You're out there, don't sponsor the show.
Not yet. They don't. When I'm the CMO, it's going to be done by this.
How much of your budget would you put into mobile? Don't ignore the fact I said blue microphones, but like, because it's easy for someone in your position as an innovation person to come on this podcast and say it's all about VR or it's all about whatever. But how much of your money would you put into, into mobile? Would you go, look, guys, we're going to ditch your website?
I do think. I'm not being sort of as read about this question as I sound, but I get asked a lot for sort of generic advice. Like, if you're a client, what technology would you be fascinated by? Or if you're a client, would you be on Facebook? Like, every client has like radically different situations. Like, some are challenges, some are legacy, some are trying to grow, some are trying to survive, some are trying to get press for doing something weird. Some people are in a risk-averse environment. Generally speaking, the most important thing with mobile, I think, is less about marketing experiences. Sorry, less about advertising experiences and more about a better customer experience. So if I was British Airways, I wouldn't be saying, how do we spend money on mobile ads? I'd be saying, how do we make the act of flying with British Airways better through a mobile device? I do happen to think that mobile advertising, generally speaking, at this moment in time, is absolutely terrible. The targeting is absolutely awful. The creative itself is even worse. So I would like to invest quite a significant amount of money in doing creative in a more interesting and compelling way, and also targeting people in a way which isn't quite so pretend precise. Like most kind of most digital media that is bought is a bit like a sort of stopped clock, where somehow it's pretty much never right, but it's very precise, and there's a lot of mechanical stuff behind it. And if you are to look at most ads that you get served, you're like, oh, that's the table and chairs that I decided not to buy. That's the holiday that I've already taken. That's the car that I was doing research for a pitch for. Like, actually, most of it is precise and entirely wrong. You get ads for, like University of Philadelphia or something, and it's like, I've got no idea where this bit of data came from, but, that doesn't seem like a particularly sensible buy. So, yeah, I just wish we could do sort of slightly better sort of brand campaigns in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, talking about mobile experiences as opposed to ads. But that's old, man. That doesn't make it a bad thing. Probably makes it more right. There. There was, 10 years ago, I worked for an agency, and it was all about like branded utility. Make something. It's easy to make something useful than it is to make something entertaining. I
think branded utility is quite interesting in that it was that expression that led to things like the Carling iPint, which I'm sure
literally.
I don't know whether you're doing
a callback on the Carling iPint.
It was a big moment for me on this podcast. I mean, like, actually, I know Stella Artois did this thing. I think in about 2005. Which was like a sort of AR bar finder.
I remember it so well.
Yeah, you'd sort of hold up your phone and tell you where to get drunk. And I don't think it was quite right, because we actually had these things called eyeballs at the time, which did a really good job of reading. I mean, maybe not in your case. Maybe you can read signs, all right. It did a really good job of sort of showing you where you could drink the beer. And I think if you weren't Stella, like if you were some sort of weird Bulgarian ale that was only available in 1 out of 10 pubs, then that would have been a great way to get people to experience your thing.
Yeah, and it was really weird, the experience as well. Like, no matter where you turned, there were 1,000 Stella Artois logos. It was just like, it was the invasion of the Stella Artois.
It was like that hyper-reality app that people freak out about. But as a kind of way to think about it, what would the Michelin Guide look like if you invented it today? How can British Airways actually commission like a really amazing content-driven series that show people where they should see great art in the world? I just feel like there's more stuff that we can do about being helpful. At the end of the day, like, everyone right now has absolutely not enough time, absolutely no interest in extra content in their life unless it's world class. They spend their whole time trying to like get rid of crap that's in the way. And we sort of come along into this space and we're like, hey, why don't we make an app where you can drink a virtual pint? Or, why don't you upload your hair swishing experience to a website? And it's like, no one has any time for this. Like, let's make it easy to book the flight. Let's make it easy to buy the handbag. Let's make it easy to find the track that you really want to listen to. Like, everything should be about simplification.
I think that's a really nice place to leave it. Everything being about simplification.
Yeah.
There's more stuff that we can do about being helpful, which is it kind of runs completely counter to the point of this podcast. But
it involves.
Despite that,
it does involve technology though, because I know this technology is about this podcast is about new technology, but things like automation can help make our life easy. Things like artificial intelligence, which give us the right kind of message at the right time, can make our lives easy. Things like AR in the right context can make things easy. But more often than not, it's not really about the technology itself. It's about the sort of thing that it delivers somehow.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm going to just do a kind of little recap so that tell me if I've got this wrong. So your job is to start interesting discussions with clients. I can see you're very good at that. Clients are worried about change.
Thinks so.
And it's your job to explore the change that matters and the change that doesn't. And you have this kind of sort of really interesting self-loathing / really passionate about stuff. Like you believe that you can bring about change by being irritating to create interesting conversations. You've worked on some massive projects that have been spectacularly terrible.
Most of my career.
Including the Nokia Music thing where they paid about 5 million quid per download of their app. And you thought it would have been more useful to get Kylie involved. And a really kind of interesting point about trusting your gut and your gut being stronger than you realise. We covered clients liquidising their heads, which was quite interesting. And you say no to meetings. And I love this quote, is you spend the first 10 years of your career trying to get into meetings and the next 10 years trying to get out. You believe in being brutally focused on the 3 things you want to achieve. But you're a true innovation person in the sense that you try everything when it's new. But like myself, actually, probably the only thing like myself where you've sort of become introverted as you've got older. And your advice to young people joining the industry is be curious and fuel that curiosity, be generalists. When you get distracted, you say go for a walk. A lovely expression. You take on a kind of hypnosis for the eyes and how you love flying and rising above everything. But your shiny new object is mobile, and the fact that we ain't got it right, and you should ignore the shiny new objects because mobile experiences are so underdeveloped, and even with things like voice. You made a really brilliant point. It's probably in the book that like every user experience adds to the old one. The mouse would add to a keyboard, and I think voice adds to whatever, or a mobile adds to desktop, and that's really beautiful and simple way of putting it. But we live in an industry where sensationalist headlines do most of the work. But you should ignore those headlines, even if I have written them, and actually trying to find the truth underneath. So, for example, and this is so true, that voice is the worst way to do most things for a brand or a
That's
consumer.
That's actually quite tweetable, that one, isn't it?
we might be seeing how that one goes on the way home. But in 5 years, things won't be that different. That's probably very true. Things will work in unison better. And actually, if a brand is listening to this, what I would urge them to do is don't think about mobile ads. Think about mobile experiences and how can you do more stuff that is more helpful to your consumers. If people want to get in touch with you, how would you like them to do that?
I get email me actually, like tomfgoodwin@gmail.com. tomfgoodwin@gmail.com. I mean, you can do the whole connect thing on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter or something, but it's quite a hard inbox to reply to people on.
Right. Brilliant. Dude, that one absolute pleasure that was.
It was good fun.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.